Hello beautiful, welcome back to my channel. My name is Bettina and I'm the makeup enthusiast. In today's video we are doing the Eyeshadow Palette Tag 2.0. This was created by Samantha March and Ali Glines. I will leave their videos linked down below. There are 11 questions to this tag. It was very difficult choosing the responses to these prompts. It was like choosing my favorite child, and I have a lot of them in my collection, so it was very difficult. But before we get into answering all the questions to this tag, if you are new around here and you want to keep up to date on all my beauty content and all my other project painting content, I hope you'll consider subscribing down below. And without further ado, let's jump on into the video. There are 11 questions to this tag. It was very difficult, but we're going to go through and talk about everything. So the first question is my all-time favorite palette. I think this was probably the most difficult question on the list, but I decided to go with this palette right here. This is the Be Perfect and Stacey Marie Carnival 3 Love Tahiti palette. It's a mouthful and a half, but I really enjoy this palette and I think it is a great rainbow palette. It's got like everything I need in it, and the formulas are really nice on the shadows in here. The formulas on the shimmers are beautiful. I did do a video way back when, like whenever this came out, and it had I think like 10 looks in it. So if you do want to see that, I will leave it up in the cards, but I do really like this palette, and I think there's some beautiful colors and color stories in this palette that you can create, and I just think it's like one of the best rainbow palettes that I have in my collection, so it is always really fun to play with this one. Just don't love how big it is. Wish it was a little bit smaller, but you can't always get what you want. Then the next one on the list is my new favorite palette, and this one again was quite difficult, but for this prompt, I chose this palette right here. This is the Kaleidos and Angelica Nyquist Club Nebula palette. This ranked in, I think, at 3 in my yearly ranking for 2021. I did also, with this tag, try and not double up on palettes, like palettes to multiple questions. I did try and make sure I was grabbing out 11 different palettes for these prompts just to make it a little bit more exciting. I do think that Angelica did a really good job on this palette. I have enjoyed playing with it. When I first got it, I was really excited. I loved playing with these like deeper mattes in this corner here, the teal, the blue, and the mauve here, or the burgundy. They are really nice to play with, and then that lime green is also great, and the shimmers in here are really nice as well. So I think she did a great job on curating this color story. When I was picking out my new favorite palettes, I focused on the palettes that I purchased like in the last year or so. The next one is a palette you keep for the memories, and for this one I grabbed out the Natasha Denona Star palette. And I did grab this one out because this was a palette that my husband purchased for me. I don't know, I think we may have still been dating. We might have been engaged. I can't quite remember, but I've had this palette for a very long time, and I got gifted it to me by my husband for, I think it was my birthday. Might have been Christmas, but I'm pretty sure it was a birthday. And I just can't get rid of this because obviously it was a gift from hubby, and it does have those good memories attached that, you know, he went out of his way to purchase this. I think he purchased it for me from Beautylish. Like, he went to all the trouble of picking this one up for me. So I just can't let it go because it does have that fond memory attached to it. Next is an underrated palette. And I picked this palette because I think both the palette was underrated and also the brand is also underrated when it comes to eyeshadows. For this one, I picked out my Bareminerals Aurora Lights palette. I think this is a great little palette, and I think it is one of the best eyeshadow palettes that Bareminerals has come out with. I think they have a great eyeshadow formula. I love like how compact this is. I love like the color story, and the shimmers down the bottom here, these few down the bottom here, are such a nice formula. I like the color story. The shadows in this palette work really well, and I do enjoy always using this palette. So I'm really glad that I have this, but I do think that people really underestimate the Bareminerals eyeshadow formula. So if you do find an eyeshadow palette from Bareminerals that you like the color story, I would really recommend giving it a try because they do have a really nice formula and it blends really nicely as well. Next is a palette that is not my favorite, but I can't get rid of. And for that one, it's the Sydney Grace Autumn's Rain palette. I am not a big fan of this one because it's just such a dark color story, and I just don't like using a lot of these like darker shimmers on myself. Probably recently that has changed a little bit given that I have rotated in darker mattes into my Pan Those eyeshadows. So I should grab this one out and have a little play with those darker blues that I rotated into my Pan Those eyeshadows. But I am not a massive lover of this color story, especially like this bottom row here. I just don't get much use out of it. I can't let this one go though, however, because this was my first Sydney Grace eyeshadow palette. And it also was a gift again from my husband, and I just can't let it go. Anything that my husband has gifted me, like makeup wise, even when I don't love it, I just can't bear to let it go because I just think it's such a sweet thought, him going to all the effort of purchasing me makeup. So I just can't bear to let it go. Next up is my favorite collab palette, and because I didn't want to double up on palettes, I wanted to make sure they were different palettes for each prompt. I was tossing up between the Angelica Nyquist palette, but because that one went in as my new favorite palette, I did decide to go with this one as my favorite collab palette, and that is my Lethal Cosmetics and Teresa Is Dead Lethal Is Dead palette. And I think this is a great little palette. I have reached into this quite a lot to create like standalone looks using just this palette, and I've also reached in for it just to use like a specific color because I've wanted to use like one of the shimmers with a look, or I've wanted to reach in for one of the mattes. So I do really like the Lethal formula. The mattes are super buildable, and I love like the tones they choose. I think they are really good at curating color stories that work well, and I think Teresa did a really good job with this color story, and the shimmers that she chose in this palette are really gorgeous. I really enjoy working with this palette. I think it's a really great palette. I love the Lethal formula. It's so good. Next is my 2021 favorite palette, and if you guys saw the video that I posted last week, you would know which palette ranked in at #1, and that was my Glaminatrix Cosmetics You Beauty palette. I love this palette. I think it's such a great little palette. It is themed around Australia and a lot of things that Australians say, so that is a really standout reason for me as to why I really love this, because, you know, being an Aussie, I really vibe with a palette that is themed around Australia and an Australian slang. And also there are some gorgeous multi-chromes in this palette. This one, G'day, down in the corner here, is next level. It is so gorgeous. There's a few other shimmers in there as well that are absolutely amazing and gorgeous to work with. And I said this in that video as well. I really want to see Glaminatrix come out with more Aussie themed palettes. I think that would be so cool to continue along this line of palettes and continue with this theme. I would love to see that. Love to see that, and love to see more palettes, more multi-chromes in them from Glaminatrix, because they do a really good multi-chrome formula. The next one is a palette that you didn't expect to love, and for that one I chose this one here. This is the Kaleidos Makeup Futurism. I think it's a Futurism 3. I can't remember because half of my writing has rubbed off on mine, but this is the Sci-Fi Green palette. And before picking up this palette, I like never ventured into green. So I highly anticipated that I would hate this palette because I just always thought that greens wasn't my color. I always thought that it didn't go with like my coloring, but turns out it looks fantastic on me. And there are some photos like on my Instagram that got like lots and lots of comments of you guys all telling me how good green suited me. So ever since then, I have like dabbled a little bit more into greens. And yeah, like I said, I just expected that I would hate this because it was green, and greens aren't traditionally a color that I reach for. But ever since then, I have really enjoyed playing around with greens, and this kind of like sparked that on. and the Kaleidos formula is so nice. It is so nice. So just purely based on the color story alone, I didn't think that I would love this one, but turns out I do. The next palette is a palette that sparks joy, and this palette to begin with did not spark any joy at all because it was a pain in the ass to get my hands on because there was a whole issue with shipping and my package going missing, and the place that I purchased it from wasn't answering my emails and all of that jazz. So it was an absolute nightmare trying to get my hands on this one. But now when I see this palette, every time I open this palette, I get really excited and it really sparks joy and motivation and creativity within me. And it is the Glaminatrix Ice Cream palette. I really like the shimmers in this palette. The shimmers are a really great formula, but the color story in this palette really excites me, and I get really excited to play with this palette and grab for like all of the different colors in here and play with all of the different like bright colors within this palette. I think it's a great little palette, and yeah, I really enjoy it. And the shimmer formula, shimmers is like my favorite thing. Like having a really good solid shimmer in a palette is like my favorite thing. It gets me like giddy inside. So having the shimmer formula in this palette is a top notch, and I really enjoy grabbing for this palette. The next prompt is the newest palette in my collection, and that is this palette from Wayne Goss. This is the Wayne Goss Luxury Eye Palette in Tourmaline. This one was recently gifted to me as a like Christmas birthday present, and this is what it looks like. This is the newest palette in my collection. I am still playing around with this palette, so I don't really have my thoughts solid down on it just yet, but this one is the recent palette in my collection. The most recent palette that I myself have purchased, I haven't received just yet, but that was the Glaminatrix Nocturnal palette. I did purchase that one this morning, but I haven't received that one yet. I won't be receiving that one, I think, until like end of April or something like that. So, and then the last prompt is the first palette that I used in 2022, and that one is this one right here. This is the Pat McGrath Mothership Mega Celestial Odyssey palette. I did purchase this one just before Christmas, and I have been using it like over the last couple of weeks, and like over Christmas New Year break I was testing this one out. So this one was the first palette that I used this year, but I have been really enjoying this palette. I think this palette has some really nice like neutral shimmers in it, and I am wearing the mattes from this palette on my eyes today, like on the outer corner of my eyes. There you have it. That is my answers to the Eyeshadow Palette Tag 2.0. Let me know down in the comments what your answers to the prompts are, and if you have any of these palettes and whether you think the same about any of these palettes that I do. While you're down in the comments, if you did enjoy this video, make sure you give it a big thumbs up. If you are new around here and you want to keep up to date on all my beauty content and my other project panning content, I hope you'll consider subscribing down below. That's it for this video, beautiful. I hope that you're having an absolutely fantastic day. I hope that you are staying safe and healthy and looking after yourself, and I will see you on the next video. Goodbye, beautiful.